Okay, so I promise to walk you through the most common internal and external obstacles you might encounter on the way towards your goal and the best strategies to overcome them. Before we dive into the challenges, I would like to give you a formula for your plan when a challenge arises. And this is the WHOOP formula, which has been scientifically proven and works wonders. W stands for wish. This is your linchpin goal, the result that you want to achieve. O stands for outcome. Here, you might want to outline the exact result you want to get from your linchpin goal. So if your linchpin goal is to start a job as a programmer or to start your own business or to start a job as a freelance filmmaker, make sure that you outline the result from these goals. Then comes the interesting part. The second O stands for obstacle. So write down the list for the obstacles that may arise. And P stands for plan. If this happens, then I'm going to do that. So the WHOOP method is based on a neuroscience concept called mental contrasting. When we imagine what are the possible challenges that we might face, but we also imagine in our mind and we plan how we're going to tackle those obstacles, our brain is much more prepared to overcome them and also much more motivated, which I think is super important. What I want you to do is to do your WHOOP. At this point, I need you to grab pen and paper or your workbook. As I go through the list of possible obstacles right now, I need you to think which one might be you and write it down along with a plan of how you'll tackle it. If none of the obstacles that I'm going to outline resonates with you, which I think is unlikely, then at the end of this video, just come up with your 5 obstacles and your if-then plan of how you're going to achieve them. Of internal obstacles, the first one is limiting beliefs. We have already covered those in great details, so I'm not going to go in more details right now. The second, which is also very, very common, and I've seen in 90% of the young people I've worked with, is confidence. The imposter syndrome, the exaggerated abilities, or uncertainty in decisions. Those are some common manifestations of lacking confidence. A lot of people either underestimate or overestimate their abilities, but this comes from the same place of insecurity and it could hinder achieving your goals. And in a moment, I will give you some strategy on how to deal with this. Speak about internal obstacles, one thing that we could experience is activation energy or procrastinating and lacking motivation. So activation energy means that you might find it difficult to start working on your goal or delaying and procrastinating accomplishing important things related to your linchpin goal. Then the second obvious energy related obstacle is lack of energy to sustain action. So you might start, you might get somewhere, and then you will feel lack of discipline, lack of motivation, or just don't see the results. Results usually take time and don't have energy to sustain the action. By the way, those 2 obstacles are super common, and I highly recommend that even if you feel like this is not you, to plan an if-then plan for lack of activation energy and lack of energy to sustain action. Last of the internal obstacles is lack of focus or attention. I have mentioned many times that attention is the gold of the 21st century. Learning how to manage your attention and learning how to direct your attention and sustain it is crucial. And lack of focus usually manifests in distractions, in lack of priorities, or inability to concentrate. And all of this could hinder achieving your linchpin goal. I want to make a quick pause. Throughout the videos, I'm mentioning linchpin goal a lot. This is why in your guidebook or workbook, you have, I believe it's either the 3rd or the 4th page, a page with glossary. And this page with glossary contains the phrases that I use the most. So if you lose yourself at a certain point and you're like, she's talking about this all the time, what is this just refer to your guidebook. And again, let me quickly remind you, your linchpin goal is a goal which is taking you closest to the dream that you have about your life and career. All right, we've covered internal obstacles, limiting beliefs, confidence, lack of activation energy, lack of energy to sustain action, and focus. How do we deal with internal obstacles? Well, we have a special assignment about limiting beliefs and limiting behaviors in your guidebook or workbook related to the accompanying video on limiting beliefs. So we have a separate section on this because it's big. What you can do for the activation energy and lack of energy to sustain action, and for the distractions, you can choose a ritual or protocol and practice it for 5 to 7 days. Frankly, the thing that works best to overcome lack of activation energy, procrastination, and lack of attention, inability to concentrate, is to create a micro habit that deals with that obstacles. And here the ritual and protocols work wonders. Now we are moving towards external obstacles. They are things which are outside of our control, such as financial limitations. Okay, so finances, of course, we can control. What I mean is that when you're at the beginning of your career, usually you have not spent decades saving money or investing just because you're young. So this might be an external obstacle. Limited network. When you're young and you're just starting, you have not had these decades of experience to create the network that you need. And of course, you might have skills gaps or limited opportunities. By the way, this is something that is very common. For a lot of people, when they start their career, logically, they don't have a lot of expertise. However, not few of the job opportunities for juniors and for young people require you to have expertise. And this is a bit of a paradox. You want someone who's young, but you also want them to have expertise. So what comes first? How do we deal with external obstacles? Well, seek scholarship, grants, crowdfunding options, use free or budget-friendly resources, and build your network. Some other ideas are online courses, certifications, or workshops to upskill. Honestly, if I am to give a young person who is starting their career only one advice, I would go for qualification. And I would go for in-depth qualification, not 2 days workshops, not 2 weeks programs. Go for something that will teach you the skills at an expert or mastery level. You can also volunteer or become an intern, and of course, explore adjacent fields to grow. Why am I saying all of this? Because your second assignment is to come up with 5 obstacles you might encounter on the way towards achieving your linchpin goal, and come up with a plan. If, then plan for those. Some other ways to deal with external obstacles is to create a realistic schedule with clear priorities. Now, this overlaps with the internal obstacles, but I still pointed it out because I believe it's very important. Use time blocking and develop contingency plans for emergency delays. Now, I think it's a great idea to make notes of this particular slide, and I hope that by now you have already come up with at least 3 or 4 of your 5 obstacles and how you're going to overcome them. Your next steps. Create a list of 5 to 7 obstacles. All right, I've given you some more here. And create an if-then plan for each one. Again, let me remind you what an if-then plan means. If this happens, then I'm going to do this. So I will be super happy to review your plans, and hopefully our chatbot will be able to give you some feedback. See you in the next video.